everyone. My name is Jonica A. Tutica from MBA. For today, I will discuss the security, privacy, and for the e-commerce. First is what is security? Security is protecting against unauthorized data, disclosure, and ensuring the authenticity of the data source, preventing unauthorized data modification, and preventing data delays or denials. Security is a protecting or defense against the attack, interference, and it also helps to the company to secure the data, especially in the e-commerce side. Of course, after the security, we have a goals of security. Um, we have goals of the security is the data to have this confidentiality. Confidentiality refers to the prevention of intention of unintentional, unauthorized disclosure or information involved in web commerce transactions. Of course, the data integrity. Data integrity ensuring that any information that customers have shared online remains altered, and principles state that the online business is utilizing the customer's information as given without changing anything. And the last, the goal of security is the data is have availability. Availability refers knowing how much e-commerce inventory is in stocks to meet the customer's demand. In today's complex and dynamic retail environment, retail time stocks availability management helps optimize inventory levels, reduce costs, and improve profitability. Next is the copyright and intellectual property. The copyright protects original works of authorship, including literary, dramatic, musical, and artistic works, such as poetry, novels, movies, songs, computer software, and architecture. While the intellectual property is a legal term that has been associated with industrial property, with the copyrights and other rights in the similar field. It is a process when someone creates anything from their mind, like inventions, literary, artist works, designs, symbols, names, and image which are used in e-commerce. Security policy and integrated security. Security policy is a written statement describing what assets are to be protected and why, who is responsible, which is behavior are acceptable or not. We have a types of security policy. First is the physical security. Is Physical security is the protection of personal hardware, software, networks, and data from the physical actions and events that could cause serious loss or damage to an enterprise, agency, or institution. Next is the network security. It's a set of technologies that protects the usability and integrated of the company if infrastructure, preventing the entry of the proliferation within a network or the wide variety and potential threats. Third is the access authorization. It's a process through which the operating system determines that a process has the right to execute on the system. The most common form of this control is the username, which we are all familiar when we log onto the computer. Fourth is the virus protection. It's the protection of e-commerce assets from unauthorized access, uses, alteration, or destruction. Last is the disaster recovery. It's an organization method of regaining access and functionality to its IT infrastructure after events like a natural disaster, cyber attack, or even business disruption related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Specific elements of a security policy. First, we have authentication. It's the practice of verifying that someone who they claim to be. When a customer is logging to the commerce site where they have their credit card information stored, you want to make absolute certain that they are indeed that customer. For example, includes codes generated from the user's smartphone like CAPTCHA test, fingerprints voice biometrics, or facial recognition. In short, authentication is who is trying to access the site. Second is the access control. Access control represents the process of mediating every request to service and data maintained by a system and determining whether the request should be granted or denied. The access control decision is enforced by a mechanism implementing regulation established by a security policy. In short, the access control is who is allowed to log on and access the site. Next is the secrecy. Secrecy is a protection against unauthorized data disclosure and unauthentication of a data sources. In short, secrecy is who is permitted to view selected information. And the fourth is the data integrity. Data integrity is the assurance that digital information is uncorrupted and can be only accessed or modified by those who unauthorized to do so. Integrity involves maintaining the consistency, accuracy, and trustworthiness of data over its entire life cycle. Data integrity is who is allowed to change the data. And last is the audit. For the e-commerce business, auditing is the most important thing. Audits helps to get overview about the performance of the business as well as a detailed insight on a number of issues. Website auditing helps you spot the necessary changes to make your website strong enough for online competition. Audits what and who cause selected events to occur and when. Intellectual property threats. It includes threats from the unauthorized copying over the internet, threats from the hacker, and threats from the employee. The internet presents a tempting target for intellectual property threats. It's very easy to reproduce an exact copy of anything found on the internet. And also, people are unaware of copyright restriction and unwittingly infringe on them. We have the types of intellectual property threats. First is the cyber squatting. Cyber squatting refers to the unauthorized registration and use of an internet domain names of the identical or similar to trademarks, service marks, company names, or personal names. The practice of registering in a domain name that is the trademark of another person or a company. Cyber squatter hope that the owner of the trademark will pay hog dollar amounts to acquire the URL. And some cyber squatter mispresent themselves as the trademark owner of the fraudulent purposes. Electronic commerce threats. For the client side, we have a client threats. First is the active content. Active content is a type of interactive or dynamic website content that includes programs like internet polls, JavaScript applications, stock stickers, animated image, ActiveX application, action items, streaming video, audio, weather the maps, embed objects, and much more. Client-side security. For the client-side security, it deals with the security from the customer's desktop system to the e-commerce servers. This part of the system includes the customer computer and browser software and the communication link to the server. Within this part of the system, there are several issues, like the protection of information in transit between the customer system and the server, and the protection of information that's saved from the customer system, and the protection of the fact that a particular customer made a particular order. Communication security. Communication security for e-commerce application covers the security of information that is set between the customer system and e-commerce server. For example, sensitive information such as credit cards, numbers, or site password. confidential information that is sent from the server to the customer system, such as customer files. Saving information on the client system is very important. Why? Because in order to conduct commerce across to the internet using web browser and web servers, the server must remember what the consumer is doing. This includes information about the consumer and what they are ordering and any password that consumer may have used to access a secured pages. One way and the most common way that a web server can do this is to add cookies. Internet cookie. A cookie is a small amount of information that is stored on the client system by the web server. Only the web server that placed the cookie is supposed to retrieve it, and the cookie should expire after the same period of time. It's usually less than a year. A cookie is a piece of text that a web server can store on a user hard disk. Cookies allow to website to store information on a user machine and later retrieve it. And piece of the information are stored as a name of value of pairs. For example, user ID A983BE CEO56398 www.goto.com. For the e-commerce security environment, we need to know first the law and industry standard, and after that, for the company, the organizational policy and the procedure before we proceed the technology solution, and after that is the data. Security threats in the e-commerce environment. We have 3 key points of the vulnerabilities. First, the client. Second is the server, third is communication channels, and most of the common threats is the malicious code, hacking and cyber vandalism, credit card and theft, spoofing, denial and service attacks, and sniffing insider jobs. For the tools available to achieve the site security, as you can see, we have a tools here is the usually that we use for the site security, like the encryption, network security protocols, by virtual private networks, firewalls. That's all. That's all the security management that we need. It is usually in the network side. E-commerce security strategy and life cycle approach. The Internet Vulnerable Design, we have Domain Name System or DNS, translates or covers the domain names to their numeric IP addresses. And the IP addresses is an address that uniquely identify each computer connected to the network or the Internet. Information assurance. Information assurance is a measure that protect and defend information and information system. We have a types of information assurance. First is an authentication process to verify the real identifier or an individual, computer program, or easy website. Next is authorization. Authorization process determining what an authenticated entity is allowed to access and what operation is allowed to perform. Next is a non-repudiation. Assurance that online customers or trading partners cannot falsely deny their purchase or transaction. And last is the digital signature, digital certificate. Validates the sender the time stamp of a transaction so it cannot be later claimed that the transaction was unauthorized or invalid. For the information assurance, we have e-commerce security strategy for the regulatory, financial, and marketing and operations. All of these, we have a control and assurance metrics and also the protects against. For the regulatory, the control of this is the database and network and security. And assurance metrics is the confidentiality, integrity, and authorization. The protect against is unauthorized access by hacker for former employees, malware, and crimeware privacy violation. for the financial, we control the fraud, embezzlement, and bad debt expense. And assurance metrics of this is the authentication and integrity. And from the protect against its transaction using stolen identities, debit or credit cards, and checks, unauthorized transaction, and overrides protect. And next is the marketing and operations. It's control websites functions, customer transaction, electric documents, intellectual property, and assurance metrics is availability, non-repolation. And for the protect against its phishing, spoofing, denial of service attacks, and industrial espionage. Enterprise-wide e-commerce security and privacy model is e-commerce security policy and training to avoid violating privacy legislation when collecting confidential data. Policy need to specify that customer know they are being collected and give permission or OPT in for them to be collected, and how have some control over how information is used, and know they will be used a reasonable and ethical manner. Second is e-commerce security procedures and enforcement. We have business impact analysis with a BI, an exercise that determines the impact of losing the support of e-commerce resources to an organization and establish the escalation of the loss of overtime, and identifies a minimum resources needed to recover and prioritize the recover of the processes and support the system. And the last and third is the security tools. We have hardware and software. For the threats and attacks, we have a web server and a web page hijacking. We have a botnet. A hagap number is hijack internet computer that have been set up to the forward traffic, including spam and viruses, to the other computers on the internet. Next is the malware, a generic term of the malicious software. And the next is the virus, a piece of the software code that inserts itself into a host, including the operating system. In order to propagate, it requires that its host program to be run to activate it. Access control mechanism that determines who can legitimately use the network resources. Passive token storage device that contains a secret code using a two-factor authentication system. And last, the active token, small standalone electronic device, and that generates one-time password using a two-factor authentication. It's like an OTP. For the application level proxy, a firewall that permits required for the web pages to move to the public internet to the private network. A Bastion gateway, special hardware server that utilize application level proxy software to limit the types of requests that can be passed to an organization internal network from the public internet. Securing e-commerce networks, personal firewall, a network node designed to protect an individual user desktop system from the public network by monitoring all the traffic that passes through the computer's network interface card. And next is the virtual private network, a VPN. A network can use public internet to carry information but remains private by using encryption to scramble the communications, authentication to secure that information that has been tampered with, and access control to verifying the identity of anyone using the network. Next is the protocol tunneling, method used to ensuring confidentiality and integrity of data transmitted over the internet by encrypting data packets and sending them the packets across the internet and decrypting them at the destination addresses. What are the benefits of having a privacy policy? Before I end my report, I will share you guys that some of the benefits of having a security policy. Having a security policy is a build consumer trust and allow your consumer to maintain a long-term relationship with your company websites, and also it's an excellent way for your business to show transparency. and helps to prove your website is a safe and welcoming environment to navigate. And it certifies your company's reputation, improves your brand ethical conduct awareness with the public and the market. And last, it's an easy way to introducing your terms and condition of use to your potential and actual customer. Thank you.